Hey guys, it's Godbars here, the self-proclaimed hip-hop historian, and this is the 81st episode of my series where I grab a vinyl from my collection, talk about why I love it, what influence it had, and what its place is in the grand scheme of hip-hop. When you hear the phrase hip-hop concept album, there's dozens of options that fit the mold. But for me, there's definitely a small handful of classics that kind of rise to the top and come to mind first, like Kool Keith with his first Dr. Octagon album, Prince Paul with Prince Among Thieves, Little Brothers The Minstrel Show, Masta Ace's Disposable Arts, and of course Deltron 3030's groundbreaking futuristic album of the same name. This legendary trio was comprised of Del the Funky Homo Sapien, Dan the Automator, and DJ Kid Koala, but for this project they went by the pseudonyms Deltron Zero or Deltron Osiris, the Cantankerous Captain Aptos, and Skiznod the Boy Wonder, respectively. This album's futuristic concept and aesthetic is strongly inspired by legends like Sun Ra and Parliament, who may exist in a different genre, but still have plenty of influence in the hip hop community. As you can tell by the title of Dell's first solo album, I Wish My Brother George Was Here, in reference to George Clinton. Dell was yet to make his cross into the mainstream through his killer feature on Clint Eastwood, but he'd already solidified himself as a legend with heaps of influence through his game-changing collective hieroglyphics that included him, Souls of Mischief, and a handful of other West Coast greats. I don't believe a space or dystopia-themed concept album even existed prior to Deltron and hip-hop, as it's the sort of thing a lot of people may have called nerdy or assumed wasn't true blue rap music. But that becomes blatantly false virtually the second you actually put the album on, as still the funky Homo sapien doesn't remotely come off like some bookworm who never actually spent any time outside. I think nowadays people wouldn't even blink at a concept album like this. I mean, Clipping actually did a dark space-themed concept album a little while back with Splendor and Misery. And I don't think any self-respecting hip-hop fan would dismiss these albums just because they have a sci-fi element to them. I actually think it's one of those cases where, like anime, 20 years ago, a rapper would probably get clowned for referencing it, but now so many rappers are inspired by anime or cartoons, a young fan of the same shows who may be embarrassed or made fun of for watching them can hear their favorite rapper say how they enjoyed the same thing. It helps hip hop be even more inclusive and three dimensional because at this point you could be practically any type of person with any set of tastes, and you'll be able to find like minded rappers and a community. I think Deltron 3030 is a great lesson for writers who struggle with really opening up their imagination when they're crafting their bars. I know I've had that issue where sometimes you get so wrapped up in not being perceived as fake, you end up avoiding any lines that come to your head that may seem nonsensical or not 100% based in reality. That writer's block can be almost impossible to overcome if you don't keep looking for more inspiration, because if you just sit around waiting for ideas to come, it probably won't happen. Albums like this one show it really doesn't have to be as black and white as this is completely true, I only tell it how it is, and I'm a liar, nothing I'm rapping about actually really happened to me. There's a middle ground where, like Dell, you can keep your personality, character, and experiences, but use your imagination to build an entire world that may be a fantasy, but has connections to and commentary on modern day society. Of course, it isn't just Dell spinning this tale, as DJ Kid Koala and Dan the Automator provide forward thinking, dense production that hasn't aged a day since this album's release nearly 25 years ago. This becomes even more apparent when you look at some of their performances of this album, and they actually will use live orchestras. This is especially impressive to me because when you look at many of the movies, shows, and music that use a future setting, half the time they'll put the date too early and just get it wrong. It'll be like the Jetsons, where their expectations for the 2020s are 60s inventions that fly or have wheels, but they never anticipate that something like the internet or iPhone will come along and change everything. Obviously, that's just a cartoon, but many pieces of media with future settings either aren't plausible or aren't interesting and creative enough and don't really think ahead. If you look back at the electronic and futuristic music the Black Eyed Peas did in the 2000s, well, I'm sure we all have a lot of nostalgia for it. A lot of the later stuff really didn't age that well when you listen to it today. Despite that music coming a decade after Deltron, the Tron-like digital theme comes off corny now, at least to me, yet by picking a far-off year like 3030, Del and the boys were able to ensure their concept stays fresh for another 1,000 years. From the skits and drum programming to the immaculate sample selection and treatment, Dell is given a musical playground that he explores every corner of. I love the idea of a hip hop iron giant like hero whose crusade to keep creative and innovative rap music alive is challenged by boring, commercial, and undeniably whack MCs. By not giving names or too many clues to exactly which rappers he's alluding to, it's able to stay relevant and applicable throughout the years even today. The notion of lazy and uninspired rap music will always exist, which means there will always be a Deltron to combat that with forward thinking hip hop. They aren't just taking robotic sounds and looping it for a few minutes, then going, wow, look how futuristic this sounds. These instrumentals swell and change into various movements, and while at times they're a bit more on the ethereal side, there's also experimental moments reminiscent of another act Dan the Automator has a massive hand in, that being Handsome Boy Modeling School with fellow legend Prince Paul. That album came out the year before this one, but you could definitely catch glimpses of what was to come on Deltron 3030. He was even an essential part to the production of Dr. Octagonacologist, and manages to have a hand in three of hip hop's most beloved concept albums, which all have a totally different style and feel to them. Most versions I've seen of this LP don't list the features, but if you've ever listened to it, you know there's definitely no shortage of guest appearances. This includes, but is not limited to, Damon Albarn, Prince Paul, Beans, Peanut Butter Wolf, Money Noir, Brad Roberts, Sean Lennon, MC Paul Barman, and another legend who would actually create a futuristic concept album of his own a couple years down the line, Mr. Lith. For honorable mentions on this one, I'd have to go with Turbulence, Remix, Time Keeps on Slippin', Virus, Positive Contact, Mastermind, Madness, Upgrade or A Baymar College, Battle Song, Love Story, and Cleophas Randolph the Patriarch. My three overall favorites would probably have to be 3030, Things You Can Do, and Memory Loss. Thank you for watching my 81st video. Next time we're going to go over to the South to talk about one of the biggest albums to come from that region in the entire 2000s. So tune in to see that one, and if you enjoyed, be sure to like, subscribe, and let me know what your favorite songs off this conceptual rap opera are. Don't forget to have a great day, and I'll see you next time, okay? Alright.